What's up, everybody? Welcome to Last Man Standing. Ryan, it's episode 12 already. Time is flying by. We're entering week 6 of the NFL season already. My name is Tony Farmer. His name is Ryan Hogue. Last man standing in the 2003 NFL draft, drafted by the Raiders. And also $20,000 winner on the floor. Ryan, I got a floor question for you real quick. I know you're not allowed to talk about it, so I'm not going to ask you to do that. I know you're not allowed to talk ahead. But do you know who the winner is, or are you watching the show finding out as well?
Yeah, it'll be on tonight, and I do not know. I specifically stayed away from like our group WhatsApp chat with all the contestants because I didn't want any spoilers. I'm genuinely curious. I have some people I believe probably did well just after talking to them or seeing how they've done on the show thus far, but I have no clue who wins the money.
Gotcha. And these are people, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably got a chance to bond with and stuff for a couple days before it went on. So you probably know a couple of them fairly well, no?
Yeah, we all stay in the same hotel in Ireland, and we have 16-hour days. So you're either constantly communicating with the people around you on the floor, or the rare occasion they let us go and grab some water or eat some food, you're able to introduce yourself. And it's all walks of life. And I mean, obviously Fox does that on purpose because they want a good show, but it was fascinating. There were some people from Ireland that were actually a part of the 100 contestants, but the majority are from the US.
Very cool. Once again, congrats on that $20,000 win. If you guys didn't catch that, the episode's available on YouTube and I'm sure some other places as well. It's season 2, episode 1 that Ryan takes home the $20K. On this episode today, you guys, we're going to go through every single game in the week 6 slate. We're going to kind of analyze it from a survivor viability perspective. Is this an option that we would use in our survivor contest? Ryan and I are both knocked out of Circa. I lost last week on the Niners, by the way. They lost their kicker in that game. I feel like they would have won the game if they had their kicker, but it seems like whenever you go out in survivor, there's always an excuse like that, and that's mine this year. I lost my last 2 entries last year when my starting quarterbacks got hurt, and I lost my last entry this year when a kicker got hurt. So I'm still licking my wounds from that.
And let me interject, because for all the talk you had all off season and our prior 11 episodes, you were always like, well, this you assumed if everything was perfect, that it would make sense to play the Cardinals week 13. But as you just can attest to your 2 entries last year, or your final 2 entries last year, and then this year, like, you have to expect the unexpected in the NFL. Like, that's just
absolutely.
That's why it's such a popular sport. Anything can happen on any given Sunday because everybody's good in the league. But that's why I caution. Like, certainly you can map out like a feel for what, but you were so steadfast and like, oh, I'm keeping this team because it's like, no, that's not. And your team, the 49ers, have let us down both. That's who we both lost on.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. That's rough.
San Francisco and Cincinnati, man, those 2 teams have really knocked out so many survivor contestants this year. It's crazy. I'm surprised you're not wearing the bag on your head today.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That was a tough one last week, man. That was definitely a tough one. I'm not going to lie. Luckily, I was able to, sell a very large chunk of my entry in the Survivor Sweat podcast a couple weeks before they went out. So I was able to make a little bit of a profit there, which feels good. But whenever you lose a Survivor entry, like, nothing else matters that weekend. By the way, that was my 40th birthday present. I lost a devastating 49ers loss. That's my team I grew up rooting for. And I lose my survivor entry on my 40th birthday. That was a tough one to swallow, man. That was not good. So we've now got, I believe it's 219 people left. Congratulations if you're listening. And if you are watching this episode right now and you're one of the few that are still alive in Survivor, say hello. Let us know who you are. Congratulations on getting this far. You have survived the carnage.
Send us a message. Yeah, we want some live interaction. It makes it more fun for us. Please do that.
For sure. And I suspect there's still some people in here, Ryan, who aren't in Circa and have their own, office pools or whatever for Survivor. And around this time, after week 5, they're getting interesting. I just had someone send me one yesterday. His local Survivor pool ended last week after week 5. So it's getting down to the nitty gritty, whether you're in Circa or whether you're in your own little survivor pool.
Now,
Always someone that's still in it. Congratulations, OG Fat Panda. If you're willing to share, and I understand if you're not, but if you're willing to share which way you're leaning this week, let us know, or let us know what teams you've used already. I'm curious who you've used up to this point. But Ryan, this is the point in Survivor where you do start to feel the pinch of teams that you've already used. I'm going to pull up the schedule here. Check this out. This is from our friends over at Survivor Atlas. You may say, you know what? I like Houston against the Patriots. Patriots are probably one of the worst teams in the league. But guess what? A lot of people have used Houston already. These percentages are the win probabilities, by the way. A lot of people have used Houston. Less than 40% have the Texans left. So we're getting to that point where you are starting to feel that pinch. Ryan, do you have any macro overall thoughts about this week's schedule as you look at it?
Well, to piggyback off what you just said, you also have to factor in that there's bye weeks now, right? We're at the point of the season where there's bye weeks that certainly, right, impacts, it limits the amount of teams that you can pick. And if you have gone with, a lot of the better teams in the league with winning records, it shrinks you're going to have to pick a 59% Pittsburgh over Las Vegas or whatever it might be this week. And that certainly impacts it big time. I see that they've messaged us now and said which teams they've picked. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, congratulations again this far. Very impressive. You've used some pretty decent teams so far. I like that you've only used one holiday team thus far. In the Cowboys, you've still got the Chiefs available. You've still got the Lions available. That's nice. At the beginning of the year, if you thought you'd use up Washington in the first 5 weeks, that might not be such a bad thing, but it looks like they're going to be a good team moving forward. But that's still a really solid entry there, OG. Congratulations on making it this far.
You think about that, though, Tony, like their last 2 weeks, they picked Dallas over the Giants. That was a last possession game. They picked Minnesota over the Jets. That was a last possession game. NFL, man, I tell you, it is so hard to predict.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan, that's the way the NFL wants it. They want parity, whether it's the salary cap or, obviously the worst team in the league getting the first draft pick. The NFL has put a bunch of things in place to create parity, and this is their dream. They have rarely any games with double-digit point spreads anymore so far in the NFL. We have a question here from Few. If you won Circa, is there an industry typical amount one should tip dealers or their proxy? Absolutely, you should tip your proxy, no doubt about it. I've never won a contest this big, so that's a good question. I've been wondering that myself, to be honest with you, Few. What I would probably do if I won is ask my proxy, and if I didn't trust my proxy, I trust mine. I might ask other proxies that aren't mine and say, hey, in the past, how much have you been tipped by winners? I might kind of take that approach.
And if there's anybody listening right now, please send a message and let us know what you tipped if you're comfortable or what the standard. I certainly don't know. I defer to those questions. In fact, I asked Tony that a month ago or so because I was curious. If you win $100,000, do you tip? Tony, for you, when you sold a share of your thing, do you tip off of that? Like those are things I just don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, man. And it's something that there's answers out there, and I just don't know them off the top of my head in terms of winning that big of. Certainly, it's a little more straightforward, like if you hit a jackpot or something like that at a casino. But when you're talking millions of dollars, you'd think those percentages would change a little bit. It's a great question. I might throw it out on Twitter after the show to get other people's perspectives because there's a lot more people that are more seasoned than I am. You know who we could ask, Ryan? Mike Buckmiller, former champion who you met recently, and I've had a lot of Twitter interactions with. That's a great question for guys that have already won this contest, guys that are wearing those championship jackets in Vegas. So I'll be sure to send a message to him on Twitter and get his perspective.
If you've been knocked out, isn't there something happening now where you can re-enter, rebuy?
Yeah, good call. So Survivor Sweat is doing a revival contest where it's $100. Starting now, you got to sign up before Friday. Go to survivorsweat.com. Check them out on social media, on Twitter if you want more details. But it's same rules as Circa, but it's starting now. And so week 6 is essentially week 1. You've got all the teams available to you. Maximum of 10 entries, just like Circa. Holidays, just like Circa. So I will certainly be signing up, Ryan. I don't know if you plan on it, but I'll certainly be signing up before Friday and getting multiple entries in that.
How much?
$100 a piece.
And do they have a guaranteed price pool?
I don't think they have a guarantee. I think it's going to depend on how many people sign up. But I did reach out and ask. There's no rake, which is phenomenal. And there may be fees, like when you pay, like by using PayPal or whatever to like fund your account. There may be PayPal fees, but they're not taking a rake, which is phenomenal. Now, man, we're getting blown. Go ahead.
Oh, would you steer a person that's still in the Circa to not do that just because it gets confusing as to which teams you have, or would you say, hey, if you're just a fan of Survivor pools, absolutely do it. It's $100.
That's a good question. My mentality, I want to get as much Survivor as I can, but I can see an argument the other way. I see what you're getting at there, Ryan, that if you're focusing on your path and you're like, hey, this is for $14 million, there's only 219 people left, maybe not add in this other thing. Like a lot of handicappers will say, you know what, I feel like my handicapping during the year is impacting how I do in Survivor or vice versa, because it is two totally different ways of thinking. So if all of a sudden you're sprinkling in another contest, it could potentially theoretically impact your performance in Survivor. Something
that's why I'm crushing you in our weekly picks. Okay, I got it. you're confused. Got it. Okay.
We'll save that for another time, Ryan. Good stuff there. Got to take a shot though at my performance in that thing. I see what you're doing. Zocold says I use Browns, Chargers, Jets, Detroit, Green Bay, and thinking of using Chicago this week. We're going to get to that game, Zocold. I think that's a fascinating one. I generally stay away from 30% usage or more. I think that's a good general strategy.
That they won with the Browns is impressive. I tell you, that ups their value big time on that.
Yeah, especially the way the Browns are looking now. Seriously. And Zocold clarified he's not in Circa. That's in a contest that he's doing on the side there. And I think I'm all caught up on the comments here. So I mentioned the Survivor Sweat Marketplace. Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and put some of these entries up now. There's 41 entries, you guys, on the Survivor Sweat Marketplace. You can see we've got one. I'm going to get this comment out of here that's taking up space. But you can see that we've got one for $4,000 for 5%. Another one, $3,200 for 4%. Oh, the comments are just flying in. Justin says, thank you, boys, for keeping this going, even with all the carnage. It is a little tougher to do the show, Ryan, isn't it? It's a little more exciting when you're in it. That first show, once you're knocked out, is a little depressing. But, yeah, we're gonna keep this thing going.
The hat on.
Exactly. But anyways, going back here to the entries that are available, I've seen them, and you're going to see them up here in a second. I've seen them as low as like $800. Look at this, $800 for 1%.
Wow.
This could end up being 1% of $14 million. Do the math. That's not bad. And Ryan, what I would recommend if people go over to Survivor Sweat, $700 for 1%. If people go over to Survivor Sweat, look and see what the entries are. Like right now, if you're looking at one entry for $730 and another entry for $730, the same price, what if one of those has used up much better teams than the other one? You're going to want to look at that before you make your purchase. Also pay attention to, I'm going to try to line my finger up here, right there where it says pick control, because if you're on the purchasing side, you're going to want to know if you have control of these picks or not. Again, these are a lot of 1%ers. I'm almost done with these. 9% for $6,000, 10% for $7,800. There's a big boy in here coming up.
I love looking at the price per percent. You know, for me, that's where I start. And then I go from there. And if I see, you know, the best deal so far has been $666 per percentage. And if I can get something around 500, then I'm thinking, okay, maybe, because again, all you have to do is win 1 week, and then next week you could resell it, and you know, with you're doing okay. You're making money.
Yep, absolutely. You can resell it in the same marketplace just with a couple clicks. That's interesting strategy, Ryan. Like, you know, there's no easy weeks in Survivor, but there are weeks where we could say, you know what, I think this will be a little easier to get by. So you could theoretically buy an entry on an easier week, or on a week that you think there's going to be carnage. And if you have control of that entry, you could do a quick little double up in a week.
Turns out that's every week, carnage.
Yeah, turns out. These are a little more pricey for a bigger percentage here. That's interesting. I'm almost done with these. 1% for 1,000. There's a lot in the 1% range if people just want to get in on this. You know what you could also do, Ryan? You could buy 1% of 5 different entries.
Yeah.
And then you've got a 5 out of 219 chance of one of your entries winning. I like that as well. And here's the last one here. Ooh, look at that big boy. 95 grand. The most recent one that I saw that sold in the marketplace, Ryan, was 10% for 7,000. So it's being valued at $70,000. And the intrinsic value is around 63 or so right now. So that is the Survivor Sweat marketplace. Definitely go to survivorsweat.com. Check them out. They're friends of the show. We like those guys. They retweet our stuff for us. So we appreciate that very much. We do have our guest checking in. So I'm going to go ahead and add our guest that was arranged by Ryan to the stage. And Ryan, I'll let you introduce him.
All right. Joining us now is one of my best friends. Class of 2003 NFL draft, went undrafted, but ended up with a Super Bowl ring. I'm going to embarrass him a little bit because his biggest knock on him coming out, and the only reason he wasn't drafted was because he has a Harvard degree and his parents are surgeons. And that was literally on ESPN. The reason we don't know how much he needs football because he has this unbelievable background. He's as smart as he is talented. Jamil Soriano played for the Patriots, the Packers, the Bears, and the Dolphins. I think that's all the teams you suited up for, if I'm not mistaken. He also really unique perspective because up until just a few months ago, he was working for the San Francisco 49ers, Tony's favorite team, in the front office. Jamil, good to have you. Good to see you, buddy.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Tony, appreciate the kind introduction.
Did I miss any of your teams? I think that was all of them. You had a cup of coffee and a couple of them for just a short time. I think we got them.
You missed a World Bowl championship at the Berlin Thunder back in the NFL Europe days, but I'll let that one slide.
Did they give you a ring for that one too?
Got a ring.
Nice.
And if he would have got, think about it, if he would have got a ring last year with the Niners as a front office, he would have had Super Bowl ring as a player, World Bowl ring as a player, Super Bowl ring as an exec, but whatever. I have no rings, so there you go.
Don't bring up that Super Bowl, Ryan. I was there in person for that. I think Jamil and I are probably both still a bit heartbroken from that one.
Yeah, it was tough. I'd like to say I've been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. I thought last year was definitely their year, and they've done an incredible job at improving, sort of year after year under Kyle. And I thought for sure we had it last year, and just came up a little bit short.
So
yeah, that was a tough one.
So Jamil, this is Last Man Standing, right? It's a Survivor podcast where we talk each week about we break down every game, but we also like to bring on guests and have them talk about their one surefire pick of the week. Jamil has an extensive fantasy football background. He and I shared a team for a number of years until we realized that we shouldn't mix business with pleasure because we drive each other nuts trying to pick. It's kind of like Tony and I not sharing a Survivor entry because we would absolutely drive each other nuts. Jamil, who is your one game you're looking at and one surefire pick this week?
Yeah, well, I think it would be easy to look at the schedule and just pick whoever Jacksonville is playing. I think this week it's Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, but I think that's too easy. And Tony, I think you're going to appreciate this pick, but I'm going to go with the Niners on a short week. On a short week away at Seattle. I don't like to pick the away team, but I was burned earlier this year in my own Survivor pool, picking the Lions over Tampa, and I think it was like week 2 or week 3 I was out. So an early exit, but this week I think it's still early in the season, but it's a must win in division rivalry. The Niners have not fared well against divisional opponents, so I think it's a must win from that standpoint. They're coming off a tough loss. I think the defense is going to continue to step it up, and Kyle and the offense is going to figure out a way to score in the red zone because they sure do a good job driving the ball down the field, and it's just a matter of closing it out. So I'm going to go with the Niners.
I like it, man. The Niners have this habit the last couple of years of kind of having this crisis moment in the season. If you remember last year, they lost 3 games to inferior opponents. It was the Browns, the Vikings, and the Bengals. And people were panicking and saying, oh my God, the Niners are in trouble. Then they beat the Jaguars by 31 points and go on to win the next 6 games. 2022, they had that crisis point in week 8. They started the season 3-4. They respond with a 31-14 win. They win the next 10 games of the regular season. So you think this could kind of be that crisis point maybe where do you think they could win this game and then use that as a spark to get going for the rest of the season?
I think so. I mean, one of the great things about this team is that you can never count them out, of a game. I think, this season it's just been a bit unfortunate in that they get off to big leads and for whatever reason end up losing in the second half. And I think it's just a few tweaks here and there. Fix it up in the film room and on the field in practice and put it together on the field. Ultimately. But I think they've shown, to your point, some resilience in these points in time of high criticism, especially given the roster that they put together. Now they have a few unfortunate injuries, but nonetheless they have spectacular talent on both sides of the ball. So I have confidence that they'll pull it off in a short week.
Jamil, what you missed, Jamil, what you missed prior to coming on was Tony and I were talking about the team that has knocked both of us out of the survivor pool was the San Francisco 49ers. Him last week and me again when they played the Rams. To your point, though, it is a division matchup. It's hard to see the Niners starting the division 0-3 and having any visions of grandeur of winning the division. So it is as close to a must-win if you want to look at any type of home field advantage in the playoffs and things like that. But Seattle's coming off a really tough loss as well. And it is going to be a fascinating game. I think it's going to be one of those close games like all the NFL divisional matchups really have been this year. And Seattle it was probably the most enjoyable and the hardest place for me to play as a player because of that 12th man, and their stadium gets loud. And it's a Thursday night, right? National TV game. As you said, the Niners are nicked up, and on short weeks, that's a hard thing for guys like 38-year-old Trent Williams and guys like that to come off, short weeks. But I think San Francisco is absolutely going to win. I don't know if I would have the stones to advise people in Survivor. Thursday night games, just in general, I stay away from. Division matchups, I usually stay away from. Away games, I usually stay away from. All those combined, I don't know. But if I'm pressed to pick one, I absolutely think San Francisco needs it more. So it's going to be finally one of those really anticipated Thursday night games, because normally you get them and you're like, I could care less about this game.
Yeah. Jamil, Ryan mentioned how loud that stadium is. Do you have concerns about the 49ers kicking situation with Jake Moody hurt? I don't know much about the guy they brought in. I was looking at his stats, his field goal percentage made and stuff like that. But you're basically bringing in a kicker off the street in a loud road stadium in a high-pressure environment. Any concern about that affecting the 49ers here?
Certainly. Jake, he had I guess you call it an on and off season last year. He finished pretty strong. He started the season off really well, and it was unfortunate to see him get injured on that tackle. And you saw the impact that had on the rest of the game. And you don't want to point fingers to sort of one area, but they certainly had an opportunity to win the game had Jake remained. So kicking game is very important. Again, you need to put points on the board each time you get close, and so kicking is just as big of a deal as touchdowns are. So certainly something to worry about, a concern. But like I said, you want to take the easy route. You pick Atlanta, but I didn't want to come on your show and give you like the obvious choice.
I appreciate you digging a little bit. Hey, before we let you go, I want to take advantage of the time here where I've got 2 former NFL players in front of me, and I want to ask you guys both a question about another game. The Bucs-Saints game. There's a hurricane hitting Florida. We all know about it. those players have left their families, or maybe they bring their families with them. I don't know, but they've left their homes early to go to New Orleans. We've seen situations where like these tragic events can actually help rally a team in a weird way and actually seemingly help them win games. Or could this be a distraction for them because they've got other shit on their mind during the game? Could it be a good thing that they got out there and traveled early? Like, how do you guys think this storm could impact the Bucks' performance on Sunday? And of course, nobody knows for sure. We can't get in those guys' heads, but being former players, what are your general thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my thought on that is, number one, generally when you get to travel for an extended period of time, whether it's an international game or like the Chargers did earlier in the season when they had Carolina and Pittsburgh back to back and they just stayed on the East Coast, it gives you a chance to just hang out with your buddies and your football. Essentially, they are your family, and that's the one thing that you can focus on is football, which is a beautiful thing. I would say in this case, it's a little different because I'm sure you're fielding calls or making calls wondering, is my roof on my home? When is it going to hit? Did I, secure the building how I needed to, or whatever? Is my car going to get destroyed? Whatever, who am I going to contact if I have flooding, so I would say in this case, because it's such a big, I think back, Jamil and I both played during Hurricane Katrina. And I remember that I wasn't playing anywhere near there. I remember I was playing in Seattle for a preseason game when it hit. And, but that was all the news and that's all the focus. And so things are bigger than football. And I think this is one of those things where guys are absolutely from Tampa, when they cross over that line, they can certainly focus, but all their downtime, they're on the phones and figuring out, what the damage is and is everybody okay? Jamil?
Yeah, I was going to echo those exact sentiments in terms of there are definitely things bigger than football, sort of health of family and friends and, the city that and the towns that these players live in, certainly, on the minds of players. I think in these such situations, irrespective of that point, anytime there is a disruption in the normal cadence or schedule, I think it comes down to good coaching and keeping players focused and keeping their heads in a good place, and so I think it'll certainly have an effect. And I wouldn't be able to gauge, sort of how it impacts actual, play on the field, but certainly may have an impact.
But yeah, Jamil brings up a great point. Football is the ultimate concrete sequential sport, right? I mean, we're so regimented. Every Monday looks the same. Every Tuesday looks the same. Every Wednesday looks the same. And when things are completely thrown off, right? Instead of practicing at 8, having your first meeting at 7:15 for special teams, followed by position groups. Now you might have to practice at night because you're sharing a field with Tulane or whomever they're sharing their field with. It certainly has an impact on just, I think the coaches probably get more stressed out. For me and Jamil, we're just like, ball is ball. I'll just show up when they tell me to. And I know that, when I'm there in the team facility, like it's all football, but I think for the coaches, it's definitely a different jam because they're having to change their whole cadence, like Jamil said. We'll leave you with this, Tony. One thing Jamil is kind of known for, and he was an offensive lineman in the NFL, but you could give him a city anywhere in the world, and he will tell you what restaurant to go to, and 99 times out of 100, it will be the best restaurant you will ever eat at. It is the most amazing thing. I've been in like the boonies of Wisconsin. I've been in Tokyo, Japan. It doesn't matter where I am. He has been able to steer me to the best meals of my entire life. For that, he is forever one of my best friends. And so, Tony, if I'm putting him on the spot right now, if you have a spot,
all right,
ask him, and he will steer you.
All right. So Jamil, I live in Austin, Texas. And I've got a couple favorite restaurants here, but I'm curious if you have any Austin recommendations. And if not, outside of Texas, Dallas, San Antonio, etc.
I think the obvious answer, folks will go with like a Franklin's maybe, or I think I have to look at my map.
He has a map. He has a food map. The guy
Franklin's is the big barbecue spot here for sure.
Yeah.
He nailed that.
And by the way, he's not Googling things. Like he's legitimately has like a pocketbook where he just pulls out. Hold on, let me pull up my.
I love it.
My Waco, Texas 5-star dining.
The Franklin's pull was already impressive. That was good. I like that.
Off the cuff.
Yeah, I'm looking, man. I'm looking. I also realized, and I also misspoke earlier for some reason. I was mentioning Jacksonville. What I meant was Carolina versus Atlanta.
Well, hey, Jacksonville's only got one win, so you could say something similar about them as well, and it would make complete sense.
All good. Yeah, both those teams are fading.
Man, I'm having...
Jamil, we'll keep it with Franklin's. We appreciate your time, buddy. As always, Jamil Soriano.
Oh, Terry Black's also. Terry Black's.
Oh, Black. Dude, I actually live about I can walk to Terry Black's from where I'm at. So love that spot. Absolutely. The ribs there, brisket there. Hell yeah.
But Austin, no brainer for barbecue. It's a barbecue paradise.
And tacos too. We got the breakfast tacos as well here.
But it brings up the best barbecue I've ever had, better than Terry Black's. Tom Jenkins barbecue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. When he was playing with the Dolphins, he and I went on a golfing trip followed by a Tom Jenkins run. And to this day, it's the best barbecue I've ever had. Don't hate until you try it. Who knew? Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Tom Jenkins barbecue. Jamil, would you co-sign on that?
I do. I would co-sign. It was a little hidden gem on Route 1, about a mile from the airport.
Fantastic. Jamil, thank you so much for your time. For people that are just tuning in, he likes the Falcons, but he also likes the Niners this week for a Circa Survivor selection. Thanks so much for the time, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, Jamil.
See you guys.
Yeah, Jamil Soriano, he Harvard grad, University of Chicago Masters. He works for PayPal now. Used to work in the front office for the 49ers up until maybe like 6 months ago when he took this new job with PayPal. One of the smartest people I have ever met in my entire life. The only teammate I will absolutely concede that he is smarter than me and tell it on air. But yeah, he's a very impressive person and a great dude. That's his pick. There we go.
Well, the smartest teammate Ryan ever had, and someone that spent some time in the 49ers front office, likes the 49ers this week for a Survivor selection. And we won't spend too much more time on this game because he gave us a good breakdown there. But the last couple things I want to say about this game, Brock Purdy had his worst game of the season last year against Mike McDonald and that Ravens defense. And I know it's different personnel, and I know some of those interceptions that Purdy threw were tipped, and maybe statistically it wasn't as bad of a game as it actually was, but he had 4 interceptions, no touchdowns, 18 of 32 passing in that game against Baltimore. So I would argue Mike McDonald knows how to attack Brock Purdy, and it's going to be interesting to see how Purdy bounces back in that game. And Hufanga is out for the 49ers, their safety, and that's not a good thing when you're going up against those Seattle wide receivers. Yeah. So just keep that in mind as well. But I like the ballsiness of taking the 49ers on Thursday. Ryan, I know you're not a Thursday guy, and that's fair, and you've got great reasons for it. But Thursdays have been the vibe this year in Circa Survivor. People that have gotten by on Thursdays are probably where they are today, still alive, because they picked on Thursday's games. And it is nice to get a win on Thursday and sit back and kick your legs back and root for carnage. So we'll see if anybody's got the guts to do it. What do you think? I think probably less than 10 people will, maybe even less than 5 people out of the 219. What do you think?
I'm going to go 9. I'm going to say 9 people will pick it. The one concern I have with your comparison with the Ravens is the Ravens linebacking core last year was the best in the NFL. The Seahawks' weakness on their defense is their linebacking core. So the middle of the field where it was closed, and that's where a lot of those tip passes and things happened last year with Purdy because he likes to throw it between those hashes. Not going to be the same. Obviously, they're really good on the outside with their corners, but I like him utilizing the middle of the field with Debo, utilizing the field with Kittle, and then running the ball, of course, with Mason. So we'll see.
Yeah, good call. Zoe Cold with a little joke here. When you mentioned that Jamil worked for PayPal, he was apparently impressed by Jamil. He said, I'm buying more stock in PayPal now. I like it. Good stuff. Moving on. Jaguars, Bears. This is the London game. I love me some early morning London games. I think there's going to be a few people on the Bears in this one. The Jaguars have had a really tough season. They got their first win of the year last season, 3-point win in a must-win game against the Colts. Caleb Williams, someone who I've been critical of on and off the field so far this year, he had a damn good game. 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, another 34 yards on the ground. This is his second straight game without an interception. Ryan, if I had like more than 3 or 4 entries in Survivor, which I think only one person does, by the way, or maybe a couple more than that.
You used to, Dan. What happened? You used to.
Oh, come on, man. Don't twist the knife, Ryan. I'm still getting over it. Come on. Don't bring up my trauma. That's not cool. If I had several entries left, I'd consider the Bears. But if I had one entry left, absolutely not. It's just trusting a rookie quarterback in London. We've talked about how these London games present some uncertainty. The Jaguars, you call them the London Jaguars. They've played in London several times. The Bears are a little less accustomed to these international games, so that adds an element of uncertainty there. So I'd only consider the Bears if I had more than one entry. You got any thoughts on this one?
It's interesting. First time ever, a team staying out there for 2 weeks in a row. Jaguars are staying out there for back-to-back games. And if you do a deep dive into what's wrong with Jacksonville, you realize, like, similar to Kansas, they're like the reciprocal of Kansas City, whereas Kansas City has found a way to win every game. Jacksonville has had a chance to win every game and has lost every game up until last week. They're actually better than I thought because I really watched a lot of their game last week, and they have some talent. They're getting healthier. They got their corner that just entered their practice window to return. Is that Cam Tyson, right? Campbell. Yep. And so once he comes back, that'll obviously be a help. But I don't think they're as bad as people make them out to be. And so I absolutely, especially with Bears offense being kind of just all over the place, you don't know what you're going to get with them. I think they have a fighter's chance in this. I think it's going to be a fun, close game. And they've, like you said, they go on this trip every year. They've been there before. And they're going to have the home field advantage. They are essentially, the London's favorite team. So.
Before we move on from this game, I got to ask you real quick, where do you rank Trevor Lawrence, just off the top of your head, like top 20, top 25, top 15 in terms of quarterbacks?
I tell you what, I mean, the way he's playing this year, certainly not in the top 20, but I think I have always liked Trevor Lawrence, and I think I would put him like at number 15 for me, for like quarterbacks. I think he is in the top half. He makes unbelievable throws when he sets his feet and he has some protection and things like that. I mean, all NFL quarterbacks you could say can and do, but I really like him more than most people. And so that's just my feeling on him. I think at some point he's got a great connection with Brian Thomas. Hopefully they keep Kirk. And then Evan Ingram being out, that's been a big deal. Huge. That was his number one receiver last year. Or at least red zone threat. And with him being out, a game day scratch because of a injury, like that changes things. And that's your security blanket as a quarterback. So once you have that, you got some speed on the outside, you got middle of the field covered with Evan Ingram, and then you got 2 capable backs and Bigsby and ETN. So I like this team.
He's had a couple head scratching interceptions this year, though. I'm sure you see like the highlights on Twitter, and during the game, I'm sure you're seeing as well. That's the thing about him, is he makes these unbelievable throws that very few people can. And then, 5 plays later or the next week, he just throws one where you're like, I don't even understand what happened there. Did the ball slip out of your hand? Like, what's going on?
Anthony Richardson does the same. However, I don't watch Anthony Richardson and think this is an NFL quarterback that can win playoff games. I see that with Trevor Lawrence. Big difference for me.
Gotcha. All right, moving on. We talked a little bit about this game just with, the heavy minds and heavy hearts the Bucks might have at this game. And by the way, I don't want to make light of this hurricane. It is a really big deal. We're talking about it from a sports betting perspective because we're a Survivor Pool show. But in all seriousness, thoughts and prayers out to everybody in Florida. But this game here, Ryan, the Saints are banged up. They were already banged up, and then they lose their starting quarterback. I don't know if it's going to be Rattler or Jake Haener. I'm not sure which of those two it's going to be. But either way, it's going to be a massive downgrade at the quarterback position. The Bucks are getting healthier, though. We've got Cansey coming back. He just got a full practice in this week. It's looking like Vita might go. And Antoine Winfield got in like a little limited practice. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him back. When those three guys are back, I think this Bucks defense is going to look totally different. This win probability, by the way, is low. This graphic was made a while ago, and it hasn't been updated. I bet it's probably up around 56, 50%, 57% now. Do you have any interest? I guess I'll put it this way, in either the Saints or Bucks in this one, Ryan.
Yeah, so I would definitely lean towards the Bucks. I think they came off a crushing division loss last week against Atlanta, where they're looking like, hey, we feel like we should have won. They get extra rest. The Saints get limited rest, right? We've talked about that in the last couple of weeks, where what is the record? A team that gets that mini bye versus a team that gets that one less day of rest, like that, to me, is a big deal as well. And Vita Vea obviously is a big deal. He clogs up that thing, but Cansey, if he's able to play like that, is a difference maker. But for me, they go as Antoine Winfield goes. He's the best defensive player in that conference. That is how good a safety he is. He's a difference maker because he can play the nickel. He can blitz. He can, run stop. He pretty much does it all. And Jordan Whitehead now, their other starting safety, has been banged up as well. So I'm really looking at that injury report. But yeah, if you put Spencer Rattler in as a rookie quarterback, obviously was unheralded at Oklahoma and then South Carolina, but against Todd Bowles' defense, that really can confuse people because they're kind of that amoeba type defense. I like the Bucks, especially if Rattler's in and Winfield is in.
Yeah, good stuff. Zokold is appreciating the commentary here. Give us a like, give us a retweet, support the show. We really appreciate that. We like the positive feedback from you guys. I think this is going to be a game that there will be some people on the Bucks because they're getting healthier, and people are going to kind of get cute and go against the backup quarterback. And I don't hate that. 219 people left in Survivor. You got to make some moves here if you want to win this thing. I don't hate it, but let me just say this. We've seen people go down in Circa this year doing the same friggin' thing. We've seen Malik Willis, Jordan Love's replacement, beat teams 2 weeks in a row. So don't just assume it's a win just because you're going up against the backup quarterback here. Next game up, perhaps the most fascinating, most entertaining game of the weekend, Commanders Ravens.
Before you get to that, Tony, I just want to say, and what we've kind of mentioned on that last one, would you be shocked if people are focused less so on the game and more so on, depending on what the hurricane, where it hits landfall and all the things, would you be that shocked if, their heads are elsewhere because they're worried about so-and-so? So again, might be one to leave alone. But yes,
it creates some variance. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they rallied around it and they're like, we got to win this for Tampa because we've seen shit like that before. And I wouldn't be shocked if they just were out there sleepwalking. So absolutely, that makes it a scary Survivor pick for me because either of those scenarios I could absolutely see happening. Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson. Let me tell you, DC is going to be going nuts if they can upset the Ravens here. There will be no more denying that the Commanders are real or not if they can get a win in this game against the Ravens. So looking ahead, the Ravens are an interesting team in Survivor because even though they're a good team, a really good team, some would argue an elite team, there's actually not that many spots to use them for the rest of the season. You've got week 8 against Cleveland. Cleveland's a weak opponent, but it's a divisional game. Those can be tough sometimes. Then you've got week 9 against Denver or Christmas against Houston, because I don't think you're going to want to use them against the Eagles. I don't think you're going to want to use them either week against the Steelers. Even the Chargers in the Harbaugh Bowl, that game could even be tricky as well. So what I'm trying to say is you either need to use the Ravens this week, week 8, week 9, or Christmas. And if you've already got Kansas City or someone else picked out for Christmas, you might want to consider using them here, Ryan, because the lure of Jaden Daniels and the hype of the Commanders is going to keep people off the Commanders in Circa Survivor. So believe me, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Commanders win this game, but I'm just saying, proportionally, like there's not going to be as many people on the Ravens as there should be because Jaden Daniels and all that hype is on the other sideline.
I would say the only reason I would pick this game over the Browns game is the uncertainty of, I think at that point, Deshaun Watson will be either off the team or benched. And depending on who they put in quarterback, I think it gives Cleveland a better chance. But if I'm looking at, do I want to play him versus Washington versus Cleveland? I don't care that it's a division matchup. I'm picking Cleveland all day because it seems like they've quit on their quarterback and their quarterback's quit on their coach. And that's a whole thing. I think this is going to be a fascinating game. Like you said, I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. I don't think either of these teams, like from a pass defense, as seen last week with Cincinnati burning their defense, and then Commanders kind of all year have been getting beat deep. I really see both quarterbacks having success and it being a shootout. I think it's a last possession type game. Who has the better kicker? Probably the best kicker in the history of the game. I think Ravens might win by a field goal, but it would not be one next week. Tony, something you don't know is that it's the Washington Commanders alumni weekend that I will be there for. They play Carolina, and they have all the alums back. I've actually never participated in the Washington alumni, so I will be back there and doing my show from somewhere.
Nice. Does that mean you'll be at the game itself, or you'll just kind of be in the area that weekend?
No, I'll be at the game. Yeah, in the
Nice.
Legend Suite. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Nice, man. Good stuff, man. You travel more than anybody I know. Love it. Moving on. Packers, Cardinals. We've been saying it all year, and even though I said it a million times, I didn't take my own advice. The Cardinals are a feisty team to go up against in Survivor. They've got a bad defense, but a really explosive offense, and the Packers.
Stay away. Stay away from this one.
Let me throw this out there, though. When else are you going to use the Packers later in the season?
There you go. Again.
Just yes or no. Yes or no. Are you going to use the Packers against Houston?
No.
Detroit?
No.
San Francisco?
No.
Detroit again? No. At Seattle?
Mm.
Minnesota?
No.
New Orleans? There's only a couple opportunities to use the Packers. Their future value is not that good. You could use them against the Jaguars or maybe Miami on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But we don't know if Tua's going to be back.
So?
I'm just saying future value-wise, the Packers make a shitload of sense here, even though the Cardinals are scary. I wouldn't do it with one entry.
I think it's a coin flip game. Why mess with it? There are so many better games that you're like, I feel better about this than messing with Packers, Cardinals.
Let me answer it.
Jordan Wells not playing well.
With multiple entries, the reason that you mess with it is because there's not going to be a lot of people on the game and they have little future value moving forward. It checks those two boxes. And because it checks those two boxes, it's at least worth thinking about if you have multiple entries. Again, I'm not going to do it one entry if I've only got one left. And I'm in some smaller pools. Well, I've only got one entry left, $50,000 pool, $60,000 pool. I'm not taking the Packers. But if I've got more than one, it's worth considering.
You're talking like there's 32 games or 32 weeks. Like there's 20 weeks. There's 12 teams you don't have to pick. If you don't love it, leave it. Leave it alone.
Well, I think what you said there right now makes me want to pick the Packers here because you have to use 20. So if you don't take the Packers here, there's going to be a shittier team that you're going to have to use at some point this season. And you're going to feel the pinch.
Disagree.
All right. That's okay. Moving on. Colts, Titans. We probably won't spend that much time on this game.
Oh.
I know you're not an Anthony Richardson guy. Joe Flacco has come in and absolutely torn things up for the Colts.
Battle of the backups.
Could you imagine someone using this in Circa Survivor on either side of this right here?
Why? Yeah. I mean, gun to head, if I had to survive by answering who's going to win this game, I would die. I would pick the wrong one. I have no idea. I have no idea, and I don't care. Like, nobody cares about this game. It's bad quarterback play. Joe Flacco's the best of the 4 quarterbacks that are in contention of playing, and he's my age, and he's been playing longer than me. Delaware Blue Hens, shout out. And but yeah, I would. I mean, both the teams have good defenses. I guess you can point to that. Colts have some wiggle on the outside, receiver wise. But man, it's a division bad matchup. It's where is it being played?
I believe it's
That's
Indy.
Yeah,
I believe it's Indy. We got a comment here coming in.
They're
Agree with Ryan. Stay off Packers, says Justin. 2-1. I get outvoted here. 2-1. Stay off the Packers.
And I got
multiple entries. It's not a bad idea.
Bayfield, Wisconsin.
Love it. Love it. All right, moving on here. Texans, Patriots. I think this could be a popular one, but the problem is there's not a lot of people who have the Texans left. 37% of Circa Survivor have the Texans left. That means 63% of Circa Survivor has used the Texans up already. I think they're going to be popular. I think a lot of people will use them. But let me throw this idea out at you, Ryan. Since so many people have used the Texans already, and we know a lot of people are going to use them this week, the idea that you could save the Texans for later in a week where they've got like less than 5% availability left, and a tough week like week 12, week 13, week 18, they've still got 2 games against the Titans, 1 against Jacksonville. That's an interesting idea. Do you want to use them now when 37% of the pool has them, or do you want to use them later in the season when only 5% of the pool has them? We talked about how important it is to zig and zag. So I think the Texans are going to be popular this week, maybe a top 3 selection. If I've got the Texans left, I am strongly considering going with one of these other big favorites this week and saving them for later in the season, because that could be a winning Survivor move. Seriously. If there's carnage on the week where you take the Texans against the Titans and 4% of the pool has them available, that could be a winning move right there. Now, matchup-wise, strategies aside for Survivor, let's talk about this game. We got Drake May making his first start for the Patriots against a beleaguered offensive line. There were rumors that the reason that May wasn't in sooner is because that offensive line was so bad and they didn't want him to get killed. Well, now that offensive line's worse. They've lost Andrews, their starting center. They look terrible. So is he just being served up here on a silver platter for this Texans defense that does have a good pass rush? What do you think Drake May does this weekend, Ryan?
I was doing a deep dive into offensive lines today because I'm a nerd and have nothing else to do, apparently. And the Patriots have given up the 3rd or 4th most sacks, yet they've had like 50 less pass snaps than pass attempts than anybody else. Maybe not anybody else, but of the leaders, right? So they're like around 80. They've given up X amount, 15 or 16 sacks, and 80 of their passing attempts, whereas the Raiders, for example, are around the same with 120 or whatever. So I think that's alarming, right? They don't pass the ball because they don't pass block really well. And so, yes, I think they have been saving Drake May. I will say that when he came in against the Jets, he looked lost. And I mean, a lot of times, you come in, Jets are a good defense and this and that, you're going to be a little rattled, especially if you're getting pressure right in your face up the middle, which is when you lose your center, especially a really good center like David Andrews, that's what's going to happen. Of the 37%, I think 35% should pick this game because, again, like I do understand the big vision, and this is a holiday team, so I'm certainly keeping that in my back pocket. It's a tough matchup on Thanksgiving, though, when they play. But I see, there's so few teams left that is, if I feel the most convicted about this is the one that, Houston is absolutely from top to bottom a better team. Houston's coming off a game they did not play well and still beat a pretty good Buffalo team, or at least record-wise, Buffalo had a good record. And, it's New England coming off of, they do get it, they might have a jolt of excitement because they have a new quarterback that can make some splash plays. Maybe he gets outside the pocket and eludes a couple guys. And
Kendrick Bourne is back, his second game back with the Patriots, their best receiver.
He's sneaky athletic. Drake May is, but again, like they have a shutdown corner on with Stingley. I don't see that New England is able to consistently put up a lot of points against them. And when that's being said, like the only thing that puts me on pause is that they switched their quarterback, but their offensive line is decimated. I like Houston here. If I had Houston remaining, that was my week 1 pick. And so I wouldn't have had them, but I absolutely would.
That's why you got to plan ahead, Ryan. That's why you got to plan ahead so you'd have Houston for this week and not use Houston week 1.
What? No, that's dumb. I have other picks that are better than that. But I'm saying of your slate of games that you're talking about, this would be the one of your slate that I would have picked.
Yeah, I remember when you and I were talking about week 1 and I was considering taking the Bucs and I did go against Jaden Daniels. You're like, rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, you don't know, Tony, he could be the next RG3, et cetera. And there is an element of uncertainty with a rookie quarterback where your first instinct is like, hey, it's a rookie quarterback. I want to beat up on him. I'm gonna fade him. But you just don't know. Nobody knows for sure what Drake May is. You may have opinions, you may have thoughts, and that does add an element of uncertainty. And uncertainty is not your friend in survivor pools. So between the uncertainty of Drake May and what I laid out about wanting to save them so I can zigzag later, I probably not on the Texans here, but I understand why people are, and I get the rationale for it. Moving on here, Browns, Eagles, the biggest point spread of the week. We've got a Browns team that has looked awful on offense. They have the league's worst third down conversion percentage.
Worst everything.
Against the Eagles, it looks like the Eagles are going to have their 2 wide receivers back, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. It looks like they're going to have Lane Johnson back on the offensive line. So the Eagles are getting healthier, coming off their bye. What do you think about the Eagles here against the Browns?
Well, I will say this. The Eagles have looked like an absolutely different team without A.J. Brown. I mean, I don't think people recognized his value. I didn't. And I'm a receiver. I've been an A.J. Brown fan since Tennessee days. I didn't recognize his impact until I saw them trying to play with Devonta Smith, who's a good receiver. But to be the guy and get all the notice, he's not. He's a great Robin to AJ's Batman. And with those 2 guys, Dallas Goedert, that's playing really at a high level. They got their Hall of Fame right tackle back, and now they have a running game. Like, this offense is going to be really, really hard to stop. Now, the one thing the Browns, in theory, have is a pretty good defensive line and a decent secondary, right? Now, what's happened is they've become so dissatisfied with the offensive lack of production that at times, quite honestly, again, this is a Kevin Stefanski 2-time coach of the year coach team. It's looked like they've quit. The defense has legitimately been like, we can't do anymore. We're tired of being on the field the entire game. We're just not going to get hurt. And so if the Eagles can get up early, I like the Eagles to roll, and something's going to happen. Stefanski's going to get fired, or Deshaun's going to get benched, or something that following week. But again, like, there are playmakers on this Cleveland team, and Philly's coming off of a bye week, right? They've got to integrate their pieces back, and we'll see how they do that. And guys are coming off of injury, so you just never know. Would I be shocked if Cleveland plays the game of their life and shows out? No, but I'm anticipating the Eagles will get up early and roll.
All right, Ryan, trivia question. Off the top of your head, don't cheat and look this up. Last 11 games, what do you think the Eagles' record is in their last 11 games? Don't think too hard, just off the top of your head.
1-10.
They're 3-8 in the last
11. I knew that they lost like 7 of the last 8 last year or whatever.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a perception team. Like, people think of the Eagles and they think of those winning teams, but they've not been winning lately. And do you want to trust a team that's 3-8 in their last 11 games with a $63,000 Circa Survivor entry against a 2-time coach of the year, by the way? I'm just throwing it out there as a devil's advocate argument to people that are like, you know what? Eagles are the pick in Circa Survivor. They got the biggest point spread. Be careful with that one. There's a couple games. I like Atlanta more than them.
Special? Upset
What's
of the
that?
week? Is this your upset of the week?
Nah, not for an outright upset. Like Browns plus 9.5. I like that. Browns plus 8.5. I like that, but I can't give you my upset special on that one. By the way, we should revisit how our upset specials did last week, by the way. We got comments coming in. Zocold says, is Hurts a top 10 quarterback? You're asking the right guy because Ryan caught passes from a number of quarterbacks in the league. What do you think about Hurts?
Oh, he's not a top 10 quarterback. I said earlier, I was on ESPN radio before the season started, and we were naming our top quarterbacks, and I don't even know. He was maybe in the 12 to 15 range, maybe 15, 16, but I've never been a big Jalen Hurts fan in the NFL. I think, he certainly does some nice things and things like that, but no, I don't believe him to be a top 10.
We got the Browns-Eagles game coming up. You know what? This guy, Steven, is using our show to hawk his Survivor sweat entry, and I don't mind it. You're welcome to do that, Steven. His name's Flowmaster5 on Circa Survivor. He's offering up his entry. Seahawks, Texans, Jets, 49ers. I like that Broncos in there, Steven. That's sneaky because even though they've won 3 games in a row, quietly, I don't think they're going to finish the season with a winning record. And I like that you've used up the Broncos already. And, I mean, the Jets and 49ers aren't as dominant as we thought so far. I think they're both going to turn it around, but still, there's a chance those teams aren't as good as we thought. So that's a pretty solid-looking entry. Looks like he's got it listed a couple different ways from 1% up to 10%. Go over to survivorsweat.com. Check out those entries.
He picked the 49ers in between the weeks that we picked them.
Of course, dude.
Well
and
done.
the Niners are going to win this week too, right?
Well
so we're
done.
going to be sandwiched in between these wins, and we took them on the wrong weeks, unfortunately. All right, moving on here, Ryan. You take the lead on this one. Chargers, Broncos.
I feel like I'm taking the lead on all of them, but they'd rather hear me because they want to go opposite you. This is a stay away game, a divisional matchup. It's gonna be low scoring. Chargers are coming off a bye week. Denver's won 3 straight. Chargers need it more, but ironically, if the season ended today, both these teams would be in the playoffs. I think that's fascinating, right? Chargers and Denver. If you said that before the start of the season, be like, Chargers, okay, makes sense. Denver, though, people forget, like Denver last year with Russell Wilson getting benched and this and that, they had 8 wins, right? Sean Payton can coach his tail off. This is going to be a coaching masterpiece. And really, really low scoring. Stay away, though, even though Chargers are coming off of a bye week and hopefully getting healthier. We'll see about their tackles. I'm staying away. But like I said, Chargers need it more because they have one less win.
Yeah, Joe Alt, their tackle, is back at practice. Rashawn Slater on the other side is not quite back to a full practice yet. But Junior Colson, their linebacker, he wears the green dot. He calls the plays for that defense, and he'll be back this week as well after missing 2 games. So Chargers are getting healthier. Broncos do have a little bit of trouble at right tackle. McGlinchey's been out, and then this dude, Alex, I can't pronounce his last name. It's like a Slavic-sounding last name. He got a high ankle sprain last week, so they're now down to their 3rd-string right tackle, and that's not good when you got Khalil Mack coming to town and maybe Bosa if he's healthy. The Chargers are not the team that you want to go against when you've got a banged up offensive line, especially tackles. So keep that in mind. But I'm kind of with you here on this one, Ryan. And Survivor, I don't get excited to take the Chargers. Steelers, Raiders. I promise you, some people are going to try to get cute here and sneak by with the Steelers. Would you do it, Ryan? I know the Raiders really well.
I don't know that it's getting cute. As hard as it is for me to go on air and say that the Raiders are going to lose a game, it is really hard for me to say that they're going to win this game. Hold on 1 second. I got to plug in my computer before it dies.
Got you.
Hold on.
And while Ryan's doing that, I'll remind people, Ryan does the pregame shows for the Las Vegas Raiders every week. So he knows this organization really well. It's the organization that drafted him in 2003. He watches these games closely. In fact, when I watched the games with Ryan week 1, we're at a sports book, and I struggled to get his eyes off the Raiders game. He was obsessed, and it makes sense because he needs to know that team in and out and be informed about it. But he knows the Raiders really well, and I find it interesting that even you would doubt the Raiders here and take the Steelers.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so big news today out of Raiders is Christian Wilkins is on IR, right? $120 million man that they signed. They're thin as it is. If the Raiders' top 22 players that went into training camp were playing, Like Raiders actually were a sneaky pick to get in like that number 7 seed in the wild card. The problem is, with the exception of Miami, I think they're the most hurt team of any team in the NFL. And that's a problem because they just don't have depth. Pro Football Focus has them 31st in defense, last in tackling, last in coverage. And the funny thing is, if you look at the teams they played, Tony, they played Carolina, right? They played Cleveland. They've played Denver. They've played Chargers. And they played Baltimore. Baltimore obviously has a good offense, but those 4 other teams are below them on the offensive rankings. And it's not like the Raiders are doing a lot on the offensive side of the football, so much so that they benched their quarterback today, which I think was a mistake. Gardner Minshew got benched for Aiden O'Connell. The only thing that would cause me pause is because now you have a new quarterback coming in. You just don't know. Aiden did some nice things last year, but they don't have an offensive line that can protect. And when you got the Steelers coming into town, the Steelers are going to mug the receivers. They're going to be pressed right against them. And they're going to say, Aiden, you have to beat us deep. And Aiden O'Connell is immobile in the pocket. He wants to 1-2-3 step throw, 1-2-3 step throw. And against like all teams kind of know that. And especially the fact that the Raiders can't run the football. Like that is a problem. And on the flip side of things, the Steelers don't present a lot offensively. They got George Pickens, who may or may not quit on the team. You just never know, right? But if you watch the Raiders defense, their whole defense is predicated on getting home and covering for a short amount of time because we're going to get pressure. Well, with Christian Wilkins out, Max Crosby's playing at 70% on a high ankle sprain. Plus, they lost Kuntz for the year. Like they have very few guys. They're pulling guys up from practice squad, starting and playing the entire game. That's a dream for a player like me that lived on a practice squad. But for to beat a really top 3 defense, good luck scoring on them. They're giving up 26 points a game despite playing those teams. The lack of offensive identity for those teams. So the Steelers are coming off of a game where they felt like they should have won. I played for Mike Tomlin, unbelievable coach. I just can't see him stumbling 2 weeks in a row. They want it more. There's still Devontae Adams drama out there. I have a hard time believing the Raiders will find a win in this one.
You played for Tomlin. You also played for Danny Smith, special teams coach for the Steelers, one of the best in the league. I think this is just a big coaching mismatch in general. I know I feel like I'm picking on Antonio Pierce because I said the same thing last week about Sean Payton against Pierce, but just from an experience perspective, it's tough to argue here. You got a very, very experienced seasoned coach versus an inexperienced coach who may be more of a motivator than he is an X's and O's coach. Maybe. So good luck if you're going to take the Steelers in this game. But Ryan, compare this to the other backup quarterback game that we talked about. Would you feel more comfortable taking the Steelers here against the Raiders? Or where was the other one that we talked about? Oh, the Bucks Saints. The Bucks against the Saints.
Yeah, I guess until I know who's going to start for the Saints, I would be a little more paused. But that one for me is a divisional matchup, so I would feel better about choosing the Steelers than I would about choosing the Bucks, just because there's outside stuff going on for the Bucks, whereas there's not as much outside stuff going on for the Steelers. So that's my thought.
All right, Panthers, Falcons. We saw a lot of guys take Chicago last week in Circa Survivor, and they're alive today because they took Chicago against the Panthers. Are people going to fade the Panthers? Are people going to fade the Panthers again this week? Falcons, Panthers. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think, Atlanta's coming off a huge divisional win, great win, and they get the extra rest. And against Carolina, who got steamrolled so much that they put Bryce Young back in the game. Atlanta's defense has kind of been questionable all year, but I feel like they're finally settling in and they're figuring out their way. They got 2 really good safeties and a D-line that in the first half did nothing, and the second half figured itself out against an average Buccaneers offensive line. Carolina really doesn't do much great, Tony, but it is a divisional game. So I think it's going to be close through halftime, I think Atlanta wins, and it's actually it would be one of my survivor picks, especially with extra rest.
You talked about the Raiders being banged up. I think the Panthers could give them a run for their money. Adam Thielen's out. DJ Wanham's out. Derek Brown's out. Guys are dropping left and right. They just lost their starting center and right tackle at last week as well. So guys are dropping like flies. They're literally signing guys off the street. Ryan, let me throw this out there for you. Is there a chance Kirk Cousins could win the MVP this year? He's got 3 game-winning drives, impressive ones, like under a minute left, and you're, bringing your team down the field 60 yards. Got that impressive overtime win where he, had that play where they were able to get the field goal off right before regulation or ended to get him to overtime. Could Kirk Cousins be the MVP? Because he can be found for 35-1 odds right now.
Well, I can tell you he's got a lot more chance than your pick before the season started with Jared Goff.
So, hey, I had 2. Brock Purdy and Jared Goff were my 2 MVP picks.
So I think he's a shoo-in for comeback player of the year. Now, I will say that Kirk in the past has also started out really hot. Now, he had an unbelievable game against the Bucs last week with what do you have, 500 yards or somewhere like
over 500.
Third amount of yards. But they have, the cool thing about them is that like they have guys that go out and Kirk is still able to find the mismatch. He gets that ball out quick, and they have a 2-headed monster on the running back. They have a good, they're good at all the levels, right? I've talked about that all year because Atlanta was the team I was promoting, and Buffalo was the team I've been fading before the season started. And the reason I liked Atlanta so much is because running back, tight end, receiver, and offensive line. Now they're a little banged up sometimes on the offensive line, but I thought Kirk would be able to have success like he did with Minnesota. And Minnesota, for a lot of his years, didn't have much. Had Thielen, had Diggs early on, and then went to J.J. Jefferson, and then didn't have much, and then got Hawkinson. And when he had those guys, they were really, really good. So I think it would be a great low-key bet because I think Atlanta is absolutely going to keep winning. I think they're going to be at least a 10-win team. I think he wins comeback player of the year. If not, something more where he could sneak into that MVP conversation because gun to head, who wins MVP if you had to name him right now? Kirk would absolutely be in the conversation. Jaden Daniels would be
Lamar,
right? If Burrow can get their team winning, his stats probably would be up there, but Purdy might be in there. Jared Goff, no. So you can tear that ticket up. Sorry.
Hey, it's early. It's early in the season. I've still got some hope. Hey, you said no comeback player of the year, shoo-in Burrow and Rodgers. I mean, I know, slow start for Rodgers especially, but you think he's dead in that market? I think those guys are both still alive. It's a long season.
It would be hard for me. I think people just genuinely dislike Aaron Rodgers. So for him to garner enough votes over somebody, if it's a, 55-45 kind of thing, I just don't see him winning. Burrow could absolutely do it, especially if Kirk is runner-up to MVP or something like that. But so we'll see. I think it's between him and Burrow for sure.
All right, we got 3 games left. Next one, Ryan, Lions, Cowboys, 2 teams that'll be playing on Thanksgiving. Of course, that's a really big deal if you're playing in Circa Survivor. These 2 teams play on Thanksgiving. Thoughts on this one? You like either side?
It's survivor potential, but I like others more. And obviously I'd be leaning towards Detroit. They're coming off of a bye week. Dallas is coming off of a short week. Detroit just has better pieces, right, Tony? I mean, they're healthier. Dallas is banged up. They were lucky to win against Pittsburgh. I don't know how they figured that out. And I think Detroit actually needs this game more because Dallas had that lucky win. I think Detroit needs it more, especially to stick with, stay in the race with the Vikings. And I mean, that division in general right now is the best in football. I'm talking the NFC North. All the teams are above 500. So there's no easy wins there. You got to find a way to beat a decimated Dallas defense. That's a good alliteration right there. And I will say Mike Zimmer has a lot of familiarity and had a lot of success against Detroit, though, as the head coach with the Vikings. So his defense will be ready, but they don't necessarily have the pieces because they're so banged up. Dexter Lawrence still out. Micah Parsons is questionable, Tony. I'm not sure.
He's out. He's not playing. Oh, I think you froze there, Ryan. I'm not sure if you can still hear us, but yeah, Micah
I
Parsons.
like. Yep, Detroit's going to win. I think they're going to win on the road.
Yeah. Because of those Thanksgiving implications, it completely takes it off the table for me. But I like the Lions side. I think there'll be a couple people that'll get cute. It seems like every week there's like 10 or 12 people on the Chiefs and Circa Survivor. And so people aren't afraid as we get closer to Thanksgiving to use some of these teams because they know they're going to be on an island. I get the strategy. It's just not my style. Moving on here, Ryan, next game up, we've got Bengals, Giants. This one opened. I went ahead and bet the Giants plus 4.5 against the Bengals in this spot. Dropped down to 3.5 point spread now. What do you think about this game from a Survivor perspective?
Well, I'll say from like a primetime perspective, it's kind of a gross game, right? I mean, I think these teams will pass for a lot of yards, so I think it'll probably be fun to watch. But I mean, when you have a 1-3 team versus a 2-2, like, or whatever the records are, like 1 win versus 2 win team, like,
Yep.
it's just not a great primetime game. Giants defense is better than people give credit for. Their defensive line is probably one of the best in the league. And that's kind of a recipe to get rid of Cincinnati because Cincinnati passes the ball so well. So if you can limit their opportunity to make big plays, which I think New York Giants generally do by playing pretty deep on the secondary, I think they'll be able to at least keep it somewhat close. Obviously, Neighbors is the big X factor. Do you have an update on if is he questionable or?
I do, man. I'm starting to get concerned about Malik Neighbors, Ryan, because what we'll see is that before players are cleared to play in the concussion protocol, we'll often see them back at practicing in full, even though they haven't gotten the clearance from the neurologist yet. Malik Neighbors didn't practice today. So that tells me he's still, and I'm not aware of any other lower body injuries or anything like that. So that's telling me he still has concussion symptoms. And remember when Brian Burns was being interviewed in the game that Malik Neighbors got hurt, he stopped mid-interview and he said, "Hey, Malik, how are you feeling?" And Malik said, "Not good. Like that dude was still feeling those concussion symptoms in the locker room after the game, not practicing this week. I wonder if he could miss this game. Oftentimes we see players miss one game and then come back for the second game. But let's look at Luke Godecki for the Bucks, that offensive lineman. He's been out with a concussion for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks now. So that's on the table here. So don't assume that Neighbors is going to be back here. But he's a huge part of that offense. Singletary is going to be back in the lineup, and that's big for the Giants too because they don't have a lot of depth at running back.
A lot of people faded Giants last week. I told you when you laughed in my face that they are absolutely a viable team last week against.
You got me on that one.
And they found a way. Daniel Jones is not getting the respect he deserves. He's been playing a hell of a season, actually. And I do like this for Survivor, but 3,000 people have liked Cincinnati this year and lost. Right. So, again, Cincinnati, essentially, if they lose this game, we say it every week, if they lose this game, they might as well start looking to next year because it is, the division they're in with Pittsburgh being there and Baltimore being there. Like, good luck finding, another 8 wins in your next, 14 games or whatever it is, but or 13 games. They have to win this game. So I think they'll end up winning by 10. But again, buyers beware because, man, they've screwed a lot of people this year.
We might see, we just saw Robert Saleh get fired. We may see Zach Taylor get fired if the Bengals lose that game. That's certainly on the table. Bills, Jets, Monday Night Football. I think one of the best games of the week. We got a huge AFC East battle. As I just mentioned, the Jets have a new coach. Jeff Ulbrich is their old defensive coordinator is going to be filling in here for Robert Saleh as head coach. 77% of people in Circa Survivor have the Bills left. 11% of people have the Jets left. I think the Jets are live for an upset here in a game that they need bad. It's very common in the NFL to have a bump after you get rid of your head coach. I think that happens more often, though, when it's a head coach that wasn't liked by the team. And I'm not seeing anything about Robert Saleh not being liked by the team. I think he was a player's coach. Maybe there was tension between him and Rodgers, but I also think he was pretty well liked. So it's going to be interesting here to see how Ulbrich does in this spot. I've heard head coach after head coach, whether it's Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, talk about your first couple games as a head coach when you're used to being a coordinator are tough because you're trying to do 2-3 things at once, and it's a lot and it's overwhelming. And so really interesting to see if Jeff Ulbrich is up to the task against a great Bills team on Monday night. Thoughts on this one?
Well, I don't think they're a great Bills team. I actually think the Jets are a better team. And I think that the Jets could have and maybe should have beaten Minnesota, even though they had 3 really bad interceptions. One was a pick 6. I think Buffalo is starting to show their lack of identity. Like, I don't know that they know who they are necessarily. And their injuries now, they're starting to show up. Like, their personnel just isn't able to withstand as many injuries as they have. To your point, it's always a little dicey when a coach gets fired because you just don't know how they're going to respond. Look at Carolina last year, right? Or the year before, So, I think the Jets recognize, similar to Cincinnati, if they want to be in the postseason discussion, they kind of have to win this, especially a division matchup. They're behind the Buffalo, but if they win this game, they're in first place in their division. Like, they're in a good spot if they can win this. Miami's obviously fading down the stretch, and New England is on a journey to be the number 1 pick in the league or draft next year. So this is kind of almost like a mid-season, early season playoff game between these two of who's going to jockey for, that division win. I think this is a 1-team league, 1-bid league. I think the winner of maybe this game will end up winning the division. I don't think any of the other teams will be a wild card, actually.
Agreed.
So it is a very, very fascinating game. I think Aaron Rodgers has been playing very poorly, but I think people in the past that have doubted him, myself included, like, he figures out a way, especially when a lot of people are hating on him. And, he's coming off his worst game maybe of his life, of 3 interceptions. I don't know if he's ever had 3 interceptions. He's never had 2 in the same half and things like that. So I think Buffalo's in for it, and the Jets find a way to run the ball and win this game.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page here. I'm still bullish on the Jets. I actually said on my other podcast, I think that they're still a playoff team. I'm not losing faith in them. I liked them before the season started. We got a little update here from the OG Fat Panda. By the way, he's someone that's still alive in Circa Survivor, if you missed that at the top of the show. He's telling us, and this is great because we can't keep an eye on the news while we're doing this podcast, Spencer Rattler was announced quarterback for the Saints. And so we've taken a little bit of uncertainty out of that game. My immediate thought is, like, I wonder what his Rookie of the Year odds are for Spencer Rattler. Because there's not been a lot of, guys that have really.
Jaden Daniels.
That's true. But if Jaden wins MVP, you can't give him. Would they give him both?
Yeah, why not?
You think they'd give Kirk Comeback Player of the Year and MVP?
Sure, why not?
I don't know. Because if you're a voter and you're voting for all the same awards, I think you're going to want to spread it out a little bit. I don't think you're going to want to give it to the same guy. But good call on Jaden, reminding me that, yeah, he's certainly clearing away the front runner for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
so don't bet on Spencer Rattler.
Rattler versus Todd Bowles defense. That's a rough first game.
Yeah. Good call. All right. Thank you guys for watching this show. Ryan and I are going to be back Saturday with reactions to the Circa Survivor selection count. And I don't know what this one's going to look like, man. This is one of the more fascinating selection accounts. I'm really curious to see how many people end up on Houston, how many people end up on the Eagles. And hopefully there'll be no picks this week. We'll see. But thanks again for watching, you guys. We'll see you back on Saturday. Take care.